Hello, everybody. This is the next Spice Up, a Spice Up on governance, reporting, and reporting rules in the financial sector. Over the past 10 years, to the past decade, this has tremendously increased in terms of higher standards, reporting processes, data control, everything else. And if you fail to comply, this will cost a lot as a bank or as a financial institutes are becoming more and more cautious on this level, and they try to find sort of balance between where to innovate, what can we do, and how to comply. At the table today, Vicky Bunyard from IBM in the Netherlands, but you have a European role and you have a Benelux role. Vicky, introduce yourself.
Hi, yes, thank you. I am Vicky Bunyard, and I am the CTO for IBM Benelux, but also picking up that role now for banking and financial markets across EMEA. So this is a really exciting time actually to be doing that, a really exciting time to be looking across that region at what's happening with this industry, because it's huge, I think.
Yeah, and is there a difference between the Netherlands or some other countries? Do you see something in difference in how supervisory boards or authorities are looking at this in different countries in Europe, or does it differ from the rest of the world at all?
What I see is a very strong commonality across Europe for sure, and that's very heavily driven by the fact that we do have similar regulation, common regulation, some common governing bodies. All of that is driving us as Europe in a very similar direction and giving us similar problems. Now, that actually doesn't detract from the fact that a lot of this is also happening in the US. I mean, they're also sharpening up their standards, sharpening up their regulation, and across the rest of the world you see something similar happening. But you do see this, I think, groundswell in Europe and maybe even leadership in Europe, in that we seem to be really trying to work our way through the issues and work our way through the issues with the regulators. So in combination, and really drive to good, positive, strong outcomes. Whereas,
right. Yeah, because you have a number of areas, of course. Privacy, like GDPR, is predominantly born in Europe, and now it's a little bit taken over by the rest of the world as a potential approach to how to handle private data for people, but also cybersecurity is, of course, is an area of attention. So if I am a CIO of a bank, where does this go? I try to be in the cloud to some extent. I try to comply with my regulators. I have all these fintech guys, knocking on my door and telling me I should do better or faster or whatever. There's a tension on these kind of things. How do you go about? These kind of things.
Yeah, and it absolutely is. And I think this comes back to, you made the comment about innovation a little bit earlier, and this real, massive tension between, we want to innovate, we want to do new things, we want to do exciting things, we want to serve our customers, we want to do new things for our customers and get our customers excited about banking with us.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, we need to protect their data, we need to protect their privacy, we need to make sure that we are secure and safe and operating in a way that is ethical, and this tension is massive. And then when you throw in the regulations as well, and the changing regulations and the speed at which that's happening, the risk is that you are kind of paralyzed in the middle of that. And I think there's a big piece of this which to me comes back to a big study we did through the whole of the pandemic, and those organizations that are really successful through this last 18-month period, which has been unprecedented. And one of the core messages that came out of that study was, it's really about focus. Yeah. So in all of this noise and this mess, who do you want to be? As a bank, who do you want to be? Do you want to be the innovative, technology bank, or do you want to be the bank who serves there's a really good example in one region where they want to serve the older clients who are not that excited about technology. So let's find a good way to serve them. And so who do you want to be in this? And then once you have that focus, really understanding, okay, and how do I think through my technology landscape so that it is really supporting my focus? Because I think one of the risks that I see in all of this is everybody's getting pulled in all directions. The fintechs are coming up, they've got really good solutions, and you could do anything, but really, what are the right technology decisions to support? Who do you want to be?
Yeah, and of course, cloud is everywhere. But in this respect, what sets IBM apart if you try to help these customers?
Well, and look, that is, I mean, cloud is everywhere, no question.
Yeah.
But not one cloud everywhere. Whole, different varieties of offerings and opportunities out there and capabilities. And on the other hand, with the best will in the world, you have legacy systems, and you have things which, you do want to go down this modernization path with some things. With other things, is it really cost effective? And so the thing that we're really thinking about right now is this: how do I get hold of my whole technology landscape, and how do I get control of that, and how do I get visibility of that so that I can operate within it effectively? And if I can do that, and I mean, we talk very much about hybrid cloud, and for us, hybrid cloud is about saying, you're not going to go with one vendor, you're not going to go with one supplier, you're not going to modernize everything, and your landscapes are built up of these different combinations of things. And so the big theme for us right now is, let's look at that effectively, and let's work out, how do I control it? How do I manage it? How do I get oversight? And how do I then really understand, and coming back to the data, through data, what's effective, what's supporting my focus, and what's not? So where can I save money?
Yeah, but okay, from a company perspective, I can understand it's a hybrid solution, and if you have a very cost effective and it's have control of of my landscape, that's all fine. But the supervisory authorities, are they equipped in technical sense and in terms of people and skills to control or supervise that same landscape at the moment? Do you feel like, are they well equipped at the moment, or should we also change in the supervisory board? Because in the past it was rule based probably, and now it's more principle based in the supervisory role. How does that work?
Yeah, and I think that's also a space where we've seen real progress actually. So I do see and if I risk getting slapped, but talk about supervisory bodies from 10-15 years ago, at that point I think maybe they didn't have the enough technical knowledge or skill, but I think that's changed a lot. And I think what I see come through is much more attention paid by those bodies to either build the skills themselves or work in combination. And you certainly see more and more of these partnerships between the advisory bodies and the banks and the vendors building up. And I mean, you've talked about things like GaiaX in the past. And we've talked a little bit about ECUC and all of these different initiatives that are popping up, where you see that collaboration very strongly in trying to understand, what does good look like really in this kind of environment, and how to have the conversation between the supervisory bodies, the banks or whoever, and the vendors and the suppliers, to really get a handle on, okay, but what does this need to look like to be effective? So I'm quite optimistic about that. I think it's going in a good direction.
Yeah, but at the same time, you see a lot of banks, like large banks in the Netherlands, for example, name IG or Rabobank or whatever, they have hundreds of people working against pretty, high salaries in just being compliant. there's no revenue stream directly, standing for this maybe hundreds of millions of cost and there's a lot of handwork as well at the moment still. So where we can be optimistic, but it will to some extent will be automated, or will it be somewhere sort of cloud native initiatives by fintechs that will help these banks as well, or is there something to say about that one?
And I mean, that's the other, you said how can we help, and that's something that we're looking at very heavily, is how much can you, or how to what level and how quickly actually can you automate that compliance piece. And obviously, the steps that we're making in that space are massive, and I think there's always two parts to this. One is, and you talked about rules before, but first about, okay, can we put in policies and can we automate the outcomes with respect to the policies? And we're certainly working on those kinds of capabilities and building those into our solutions going forward. But also, certainly the work that we've been doing around cloud for financial services, where we're looking at, okay, how do I set up a cloud environment from the start so that I can be confident that I have the capabilities in place to be compliant? And obviously, there's always a bit of work in there, because you want to tune those things, because with the best will in the world, no bank is exactly the same, and so you want to be able to tune those things to fit your particular scenario. But fundamentally, how do we set up these cloud environments so that they are enabled to be compliant? And then how do we build in those capabilities? And of course, AI is a huge piece of that, is how do we build in those capabilities which will either automate those compliance pieces, or at least warn you when things are going strange. Let's put it that way.
And will we also be in the future, I don't know, just a question, about shared responsibility. I mean, if you are wrong, and if things go wrong and you're not compliant, the fines are pretty hefty. Is it possible to think that fines or responsibility on these kind of things, because you're managing probably or co-managing a landscape? Who's responsible in the future, or now already?
Do you know, this is such an interesting question, and it's so top of mind for people right now. And this concept of shared responsibility is coming through very strongly in cybersecurity, no question. But taking it more broadly, I think it's essential, and that we start to think in these kinds of terms. And one of the things I've talked about in the past, is this idea that it takes a village to raise a child, and as far as I'm concerned, it takes an ecosystem to raise good technology. And so part of that, building out these technology platforms, and platform is the way forward, and platforms with ecosystems are the way forward. And I think one of the things that we have to address much more strongly is, what are the responsibility models in those I've lost the word, in those kind of platforms and ecosystems. What are the responsibility models, and where is the responsibility shared, and being really clear about those definitions, because as you move further into more tech driven, more software driven, more and you take more of an agile approach, you take more of a platform approach, you do more with microservices, all of these combinations of things make that ownership responsibility model more dynamic and more complex. So, this concept is becoming more and more important, I think, and really not assuming what those models look like and actually defining what those models should look like is a bit of work that we need to do, in fact.
Interesting. Yeah, because I started this conversation with the idea, like probably all the regulation, the wave of regulation and being compliant or whatever, probably hinders innovation to a certain extent. But now hearing you, probably the way people and companies cooperate in this ecosystem environment and try to find also shared responsibility and try to find ways of being compliant, and that probably that's what you said. Then become much more optimistic about how we should go about with these kind of things, because cybersecurity is every day in the paper, and it's a shared responsibility in a societal. It's not only the IT providers or vendors. There's much more to do it. I would say. So thank you. To end with a positive note, we can be positive in a way, no?
Well, and I might add, so I had the absolute honor of interviewing Nassim Nicholas Taleb fairly recently, and he tells a very interesting story about, we talk regularly about post-traumatic stress. Yeah. And so we talk about things that appear negative driving us into stress. But he talks very clearly about the alternative, which is post-traumatic growth. And the fact that these pressures and these tensions, these are the things that drive innovation. And that is why I'm so optimistic about this, because that tension and that crucible, that's the thing that will drive the new and the exciting and the effective innovation.
All right. Well, much more ahead. Thank you very much for this Spice Up, and probably in the near future we take a second one and they take the next step. Where is this heading? Thank you very much. See you next time.